everybody. Welcome to Blog Talk Radio, the Sales Professional Network. I am your host, Andre Harrell. This is Blog Talk Radio's first and only show dedicated to the needs of the sales professional, regardless of the industry that you're in. If you're in the sales business, this channel and show was meant really for you. We focus on topics that are relevant to all industries, and the commonality is that we as sales professionals face similar challenges each and every day, and the Sales Professional Network, TSPN, really was sincerely designed to create a forum where we can discuss these challenges and come up with some solutions and best practices to meet those challenges. This show is brought to you by AH2 and Beyond Consulting. That's AH2 and Beyond.com, delivering beyond our clients' expectations in sales strategies, marketing, and sales training. AH2 and Beyond, increasing your competency means increasing your sales results. Tonight's show is just really my thoughts on last night's shows. I do these afterthought shows on Wednesday at 7 p.m. And last night's show, which was Succeeding as a Sales Manager, Is There a Blueprint? We'll be focusing on, again, my feedback and my thoughts based on that show. On this evening's show, my afterthought show. So if you're coming back tonight after listening to last night's show, as I always say, welcome back, and thanks for visiting our show tonight. If you didn't get a chance to listen to last night's show, the show is in the archives view, so you can go back into Blog Talk Radio, and you can hear that show in its entirety. For those of you listening to this program and would like to join in with me in my pontification of tonight's subject, you can call in at 347-838-9979. You can press the number 1 on your keypad. I'll see you in the switchboard, and I will get to you right away and as soon as I can. First, I'd like to thank Bob Spining, proprietor at RE Spining, LLC, who was our guest speaker for last night's program. I thought Bob did a fantastic job really spelling out his thoughts regarding what it's going to take to succeed in a sales management role, or for that matter, in any type of management role where you're managing people. So when I look at the question, is there a blueprint that predicts someone's success as a sales manager or a manager of people? You know, for me to say there's just one way to do things kind of goes against my principles and how I think. You know, I'm the type of person who believes in the saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And please, I hope I'm not offending the folks from PETA. It's just a saying, so I don't want the PETA folks to come after me. But I don't really believe the one-size-fits-all kind of thinking is probably the most appropriate in a lot of different ways. And I would also say, firstly, it probably gets us in trouble at times, because I've always felt that have this one-size-fits-all thinking really allows us to be lazy. And to me, it's just a lazy way of thinking. And so when we look at the whole idea of succeeding as a sales manager, is there a blueprint? I do believe, in the end, there are certain characteristics that we can obtain as human beings that will give us the opportunity to be successful as a sales manager and or a quote-unquote manager of people. And as I've stated in just about all my afterthought shows, and probably I've stated it a couple of times in my shows on Tuesday night when I have guests, is that I always try to state sales really does mimic life. And I think these characteristics that I'm about to go into can really be used in everyday life to help us just be better people. So with that being said, you're probably waiting, Andre, what the heck are these 3 characteristics? I'll get right to them right now. I think the first characteristic is humility. That's a trait and characteristic that I want to really spend some time on tonight in detail when we're looking at succeeding as a sales manager or just a manager. The second one is competency, which pretty much the word speaks for itself. That's very, very important. And of course, the third one is inspired. So when we look at the first, humility to me is a sign of strength. For some reason, and I'm not clear on this, but I'm not sure why we as quote-unquote human beings kind of look at the word humility or being humble as a sign of weakness. I never really quite understood that, or I don't understand that. Because when you say somebody is humble, there's a sense of they're either passive or they're weak or they're not strong enough to do whatever job, or quite frankly, at the end of the day, they're just weak people. And really, if you look at humility, it really is a sign of strength, because you're taking a self-assessment of yourself. And it really helps you to empower yourself when you're in this humility state or when you're in a humble state, because you know that you can be the best you can be at any given time, any given period in your life. So really looking at humility as a sign of strength, a personal sign of strength, is incredibly important and useful if you're going to be successful as a manager, or if you're going to be successful at any point in your life. As a manager, your success depends on others. If you're going to be a manager of people, it's really a, unselfish aspect to the job. You can't think about yourself. The role of being a manager is not all about you. It's about your people. And you're only successful if your people are successful. And that's a form of humility. Knowing that I cannot succeed and I can't get things done and I cannot accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish without the help of others. And in this case, without the help of the people that report to me. So knowing that is vitally important. Oftentimes you'll see people in high levels of leadership that have this quote-unquote God complex, where they think that, whatever decisions they make or whatever opinions they have is gospel. And that's a dangerous way of thinking if you're going to be in any type of leadership role, because in today's times, people will turn that right off and you'll lose your people. So this whole idea of your success really depends on the success of your people, and the people that report to you is a sense of humility. And as I said, is a sense of strength as far as your standpoint is concerned. Another part of humility as a manager is consistently learning. One of the things, when I was in a leadership position, I had managers that reported into me, I used to always tell them that your learning has not stopped. Yes, you've been promoted, or yes, you've been put into a position of leadership where you have people reporting to you. But that doesn't mean that the education and the learning process has stopped for you. On the contrary, it's probably even more heightened. Because I will tell you, and anybody that's listening to tonight's program and is hearing this, if you're managing people, boy, you learn something each and every day. If you are leading human beings, because we're all different, we all have different personalities, and as you can tell, we all have different characteristics and attributes. One person leading a group of people can be challenging. But as I mentioned last night, can be one of the most refreshing, powerful, positive things you can do in your entire life if you do it well. But with that being said, even from that standpoint, you're always learning, constantly learning. And if you have that humble view of yourself and your position, knowing that your learning never stops, you can learn something new each and every day, especially as you're leading people, that's vitally important. And it's a humble way of thinking about things, because you know that, if you're learning something every day, you know that you're moving forward in the growth pattern. And you're knowing that as a human being, that if you're learning something different every day, that just advances you. And that's more opportunities for you to be able to teach others. And again, especially if you're going to be in a leadership position. So you're constantly learning as a manager, as a form of humility. And then the other thought, and this is a little bit more sobering, folks, because this is something that we all have to think about, regardless if we're in a managerial role or regardless whatever role that we're in. The thought of knowing, let me repeat this, the thought of knowing someone else could do your job, if not better, is a very humbling kind of thought. And you should strive to be the best you can be. But I think we all need to kind of step back. I think at some point, we get to a level of this seniority, or we get to this level of quote-unquote power, and hubris starts to set in, where we start to feel like we're on the mountaintop and we can't be nudged off. And you've seen it in many cases, I'm sure, where, you have these sports stars, you have these CEOs of companies, and they get in these roles, and they get in these top-level roles, and they just think everything is within their grasp in terms of they don't have to learn anymore, their direction is gospel, and they just have this hubris way of running the position and, quite frankly, running their lives. And what happens is that something humbling comes along and knocks them off the perch. And that happens over and over and over again. You've probably seen it in your own experience, and you've seen it from other people that you've seen either on TV or, like I said, sports stars or CEOs. It happens all the time. As soon as you think you can't learn anymore, and as soon as you think you've gotten at the height of hubris, that's when humility hits you right smack dab in the face. So the last thought is in terms of humility, and I've always thought it's very important. It's something to always stick in your craw, and it's like the little chip on your shoulders, is to think that knowing that someone else could do your job. You're not irreplaceable. I don't care what you do. If you're a sales manager, as I mentioned, if you're a CEO of a company, you can be replaced, and somebody can do the job better than you. So with that thinking, you always strive to be the best that you can be. Again, that's an inner strength. That's a humility that every one of us should carry with us, knowing that we still need to learn and we still need to be the best that we can be, and knowing that there's probably somebody out there who could do my job and do it better. But you have to have the thought process, not today, because I'm going to be the best I can be in this position. So that's humility in a little bit more thorough terms. So humility has to be probably the top spot when you're looking at how do you succeed as a sales manager or a manager of people. And I just said the second point is competency. Far too often we've seen people placed in leadership positions that are not ready for it. I mean, have you seen that before? Oftentimes, especially in the sales business, we typically promote people that were very successful as an individual contributor, as an individual salesperson. And we say to ourselves, wow, that person can probably duplicate themselves and put them in, and if they're put into a leadership position, they can get everybody else to sing off the same sheet of music. And I've seen it 1,000 times, so I'm sure you have, is that we promote these people not based on their ability and their background experience, and most importantly, their training to be able to lead and manage through others, but this whole idea that the success will exude and perspire off of them onto the persons or the people that report to them, and they'll be successful too as well. And that is the biggest thought mistake, and I'll repeat that. It is the biggest thought mistake anybody can make in putting someone in a position of leadership and they're not ready for it. Competency is so important, and I've always said it takes time. You should maturate yourself before getting into a leadership role, whether it's training, whether it's going through a management development program, whether it's just going through an experience where you're developing even more in your current position, which is getting you ready for that next level position or that next level of leadership in your career. Take the time to make sure that you're competent before getting into that role, because not being ready and having people report into you, that is a nightmare situation, not only for you, but it's also a nightmare situation for the people that report into you. It's a total train wreck on both sides. So competency is huge when you're looking at being ready for that next level position, the management position. I've also believed in terms of competency is that competency breeds credibility. Looking back at your people, if they know that you're not competent in your position, you've just lost all credibility in the people that report to you. And it's going to be really hard to get your folks to maximize their performance, quite frankly, for you and importantly for them, for themselves. If they see that you're not competent at your position and you're not knowledgeable, you're not experienced, and in the end, you're not being effective as a leader, you're not going to do well in that role. And I've always said competency breeds credibility. People like to know the people that they're quote-unquote following know what the heck they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing, it's not going to exude a lot of confidence in the people that are reporting to you. So make sure that if you're going to get into that role, you're competent enough that you're going to bring credibility to yourself, credibility to the role, and of course expect credibility from the people that report to you. The other thing about competency is that it breeds wisdom. We talk about wisdom almost in the same breath as we talk about or as we speak to experience. And that's true in some aspects. But oftentimes competency comes from going through the proverbial wars. going through adversity. We talked about that on previous shows when we had a show about adversity and achieving through adversity. Oftentimes credibility and wisdom comes through, having failures and learning from your failures and succeeding from those failures in order to help others. And so in a sense, competency breeds wisdom, because if I know you as my leader, you've gone through the same hardships and the same challenges that I've gone through in my current position, I'm more inclined to, let's face it, listen to you, learn from you, and be mentored by you in terms of the right things to do in my position and how to be the best in my position. So competency really does breed wisdom too as well. And then the last prong when you're looking at competency is that competency, you can also anticipate. I'm sure those of you who have been in a sales leadership role or a managerial role for some time, you almost can anticipate when a situation or a problem is going to occur even before it occurs. To me, that's pure competency. You're so experienced in your given position that when issues start to come about, you know exactly how to react. You know exactly how to fuse the situation or deal with the crisis. That's pure competency. And don't think for a minute that the people that are reporting to you don't know that you have that competency, because they're looking for you to step up to the plate and show competency if it's a bad situation that's occurred or if it's a crisis that occurred. So they're looking at you, how are you going to handle it? And having competency, you can almost anticipate how you're going to manage that situation or lead to that situation. So I always talk about extreme competency and being very competent as a sales leader or sales manager, or again, a manager of people. It's your ability to be able to anticipate. So those are the points I would state under competency that should be there for somebody to succeed as a sales manager. And the third and last point of contention when you're looking at a certain characteristic in succeeding as a sales manager is inspired. And when I talk about being inspired as a sales leader or a manager of people, it's really believing in yourself and your people. It's kind of difficult to go into a role of a leadership and not believe in yourself, because that's going to be an easy way that you're going to set yourself up for failure if you don't believe in yourself, because you're probably not going to believe in your people, and definitely your people are not going to believe in you. So being inspired, I would say underneath that has to be, do I believe in myself that I can do this job? Do I believe that I can lead my people, through the proverbial war? Can I lead them through the bad times just as much as I can lead them through the good times? That's really believing in yourself. And then conversely, believing in your people, knowing that they can get the job done. That's being inspired. The other part of being inspired is, do you have a purpose? I've seen many times where people are getting in leadership roles and they really just don't have a purpose. Typically, it's not fair for me to say typically, but oftentimes I see people getting in leadership roles just for the money and just for the power. So their whole point is, if I get into a director of sales position or if I get into a VP of sales position, I'm going to make all this money and I'm going to be known as king or queen. And again, as I said earlier, that's a sure avenue to failure, having that thought process, because that's not a good purpose. Because if you notice, making a lot of money because you're in that role and pronouncing yourself as king or queen, you really don't have your people. You don't really have the interest of your people in mind at that particular time. You don't. And I talked about it earlier. Humility is knowing that you won't succeed without your people succeeding. And so your purpose really should be to drive inspiration, not only yourself, but drive inspiration in your people. What is your purpose in that role? Is your purpose there to help yourself or to help your people? It's got to be clear that your purpose really to help your people, because guess what? In turn, you're going to be helped. It's like the laws of the universe, folks. The more you put in, the more you get back. And the same holds true if you're going to be leading people and managing people. So the purpose has to be positive, the purpose has to be strong, and the purpose has to be you're in it for your people that report to you. And then another point under being inspired, and it's a big one for me, and that's leading by example. Does your actions meet your words? And I've seen that too, and I'm sure those of you who are listening to tonight's program have seen this too. You've seen people, on the pulpit that'll give out direction and they'll speak these great things, but then after they leave the pulpit the next day, their actions don't support what they pretty much just said prior. And that's key, because your people will see how you lead just through your example and through your actions. So this whole point of being inspired has to go in tune with leading by example. If you're leading by example, you are inspired. You really are. You are inspired because you are practicing what you're preaching. And as a leader, as a sales leader or a leader of people or a manager of people, you know that you've got impressionable minds, the people that are reporting to you, watching your every step. They used to tell me when I was way back in the day, when I first became a district manager, I remember my manager used to always say to me that regardless of wherever you're at with regards to work and your job, if you're at a national meeting and you're on the elevator and there's people around you, especially your people that report to you, you are to exude leadership. You are to lead by example. Just because our meetings stop at 5 o'clock doesn't mean after the meeting, okay, you go back to being unprofessional and all this other kind of stuff. You are always, always, always on call for being a leader and leading by example. If you're around your people or if you're around other people within the corporation, your ability to lead by example 24/7, if you're in the work environment, is so important. I never really realized that till I noticed, obviously, some folks who are in leadership, positions, outside of work, they would be totally different type of people when they're around colleagues that you thought to yourself, how in the world did they get into that leadership role? It's always a perception. And leadership and leading by example could have a negative perception if you don't obviously lead by example the right way. So the leading by example is a big one. And the reason why I'm probably spending a lot of time on it, because being inspired is leading by example. And then something that I raised a little bit earlier with regards to humility, but the other point with being inspired is every day should be a learning experience. If you're inspired in terms of what you do, we all know that, we get up every day, and some days, we just don't feel inspired as other days. Some days we feel like, wow, I can conquer the world. And so, sometimes, the feelings and emotions kind of go back and forth given the day. But that's when you really have to look back on, boy, I've got to be inspired today, because if I'm inspired, my people are going to be inspired, because guess what? I've got to lead by example. So every day should be a learning experience. When you wake up, if you have the thought process that I'm going to learn something new tomorrow, and I'm going to learn something new the next day, and I'm going to learn something new the following day, that's being inspired. That is really being inspired. Again, the learning piece, this has nothing to do with, and I expressed earlier about humility. That's being willing to learn every day. But being inspired is knowing that each and every day. It's the inner being of me knowing that when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'm going to learn something different. That's being inspired. And whatever I learn is going to help me be a better manager, a better leader, and at the end of the day, a better person. That's empowering, and that's inspiring. And that's something we need to shoot for. So when we look at the three approaches or the three characteristics to succeeding as a manager of people or as a sales manager, it's really important to look at the three areas because I think they're vital. It's humility, competency, and being inspired. And while I said earlier, there's probably not a specific one-size-fits-all or a blueprint to succeeding as a manager or as a sales manager, those three areas, I got to think, you can't go wrong if you got those three areas down. Again, humility, competency, and being inspired. You're going to succeed. Not only, folks, as a sales manager or a manager of people, you're going to succeed in life. Okay? We're down to the last 4 minutes of the show. I want to thank everybody for visiting tonight. And again, if you did get a chance to listen to last night's show and you're visiting on this evening's show, thanks for coming back. If you didn't get the opportunity to listen to last night's show, it's in the archives view. Gives you a better context of what I've talked about this evening on tonight's show. And again, please come back. Tell your friends about the the Sales Professional Network. You can follow us. There's the follow button. And, of course, I want to remind everybody the show is brought to you by AH Square and Beyond Consulting. That's AH, 2, Beyond.com, delivering beyond our clients' expectations in sales strategies, marketing, and sales training. AH Square and Beyond. Increasing your competency means increasing your sales results. Just as a reminder, next week's show, January 31st, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I want to reiterate to everybody, the Sales Professional Network show is every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Again, I'll repeat that. This show is aired every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, of course, on Wednesday, like tonight, I'll have My Afterthought show, where you have the opportunity to kind of listen to my thoughts in terms of what took place in the subject matter in previous night's show. Next week's show is going to be great. You got to come back. We're going to be talking about crisis in business, how leaders deal with crisis and how they manage crisis. You know, we've seen, unfortunately, a lot lately, people in leadership positions not effectively manage crisis situation. You know, i.e. the boat cruise, the cruise Concordia, probably wasn't adequate leadership on the part of the captain, as probably all of you who are listening to tonight's program can agree. And we've seen many disastrous situations take place where leaders just didn't step up. Well, we're going to talk about on next week's show different ways one who's in a leadership position really can step up and manage a crisis situation. And importantly, folks, lead through a crisis situation. And that's a show I think we should hear about on many other broadcast TVs. You know, you don't hear about people effectively managing crisis. And so we're going to talk about that too. We're going to give some examples of who has done a very good job managing crisis versus, you know, folks that may not have to manage crisis, but talk about some best practices and solutions and some ways to manage a crisis if you're in a leadership role. Again, you can please follow us on updates. You can follow us by pressing the follow button. You'll automatically get, you know, show times and different subject matters on email. So do that. And also, as I mentioned quickly, and I'll re-mention again, please invite your friends, colleagues, and let them know that there is a channel show on internet radio just for them, the Sales Professional Network. It's regardless of the industry that you're in. We all talk about different issues and challenges that encompass all of our positions as sales professionals, again, regardless of the industry we're in. So thank you so much for joining us tonight on My Afterthought show, the Sales Professional Network, and we'll see everybody next Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Have a great night.